Hi, I'm Philip Crawford, a filmmaker from Port Kembla, just south of Sydney. Now, Port Kembla is mostly known for the steelworks, but it's also the birthplace of a quiet revolution in the funeral industry. When community leader Jenny Briscoe Huff came up with the idea for a not-for-profit funeral service, she worked with dozens of volunteers, including me, to make it a reality. Now Tender Funerals is looking to change the way that we do death right around Australia. And just letting you know, this story does contain images of a dead body.
We treat our mortuary as a sacred space, and so we treat the act of caring for someone's body as a sacred act. When we wash someone, it's not really because they're dirty, it's more because it's the last act of caring for someone's body.
Drahomir was my ex-partner. He's the father of my beautiful daughter Amala, who's now 17. And he was an amazing artist and a friend as well.
Look at those hands, incredible. They're big, capable.
It's quite an honour to be able to look after someone after they've died. For me, it's really important to maintain their humanity, because that person represented a parent or a sibling or a child to the people in their life. And they can't advocate for themselves anymore, so that's where I step in.
I think people are afraid of death, but being afraid of the dead is a different thing. We say to people when they're coming into the mortuary, we say, well, you're about 5 minutes away from not being afraid. Because, of course, when you see that person in the mortuary, that's your person. And you're not afraid of them. You know them.
I want to see the funeral industry change. I want to see what we're offering is really normal and not unusual. And I want to see having access to the body as a really normal thing.
Funerals are one-off events, and they can be not good or they can be absolutely transformational. And why not? Why not go for the absolutely transformational? Because that's the right thing to do. Port Kembla is an industrial town. Its reputation was like lots of disadvantage, lots of drug and alcohol issues. Now there's a sort of turning happening in Port Kembla where there's a lot of young people moving in. So it's a community that's changing. But what people probably don't know about Port Kembla is that it's home to a movement that's transformed the way that we do death.
Tender is a not-for-profit funeral service that's community-based, and we work to provide beautiful and affordable funerals for everyone, but we also work to change the culture around death so that we become a community that knows what to do when someone dies rather than just following a process that we don't understand. Jenny Briscoe Huff was fundamental to Tender happening. She is like this incredible leader in our community. And the reason that she's so great is because she's not trying to be an incredible leader in her community. She's trying to be a good human in her community.
I've been working in the Port Kembla Community Project for over 20 years. I'm the General Manager, and we create projects that the community want to see happen. I'm not trained as a community development worker. I'm not trained as anything, actually. But I do know about community development. That's in my DNA. I just grew up in a suburb in Sydney. It's, 5 children in my family. My mother ran a hairdressing salon at home.
Now this is her with the grandmothers, Rosina, Rose and Rose.
She was this person who understood people. She would go to old people's homes and she would do the old people's hair and we'd have to go.
But she's done all of their hair, I bet.
We're like, do we have to go? Those old people, they're a bit smelly. She'd be like, I don't care, you're going and you're going to give them a hug. We possibly are the only people who are physically touching these people, so we're going to do it. So that was sort of the environment. Other people were important. My mum died in 2008 and I hadn't had any experience at all in the funeral industry. I just went through the same process that everyone has to go through when they're organising a funeral. I'm quite a forthright person and I was surprised at the way I didn't ask questions. We had to pick a coffin out and it was like, there's no prices on the coffin. We owned the burial plot. We did the flowers. We just drove in our own cars. We washed and dressed her. We did everything. And we got a bill for something like nearly $10,000. And I suppose it was in that moment that I was like, I don't know how people will pay for this.
She'd heard the stories of people trying to pay off a debt for a funeral and a burial and taking 10 years to do it. And I think that brought into incredible sharp focus what people in her community of Port Kembla were dealing with.
Suddenly something becomes very clear in your mind about a possibility of something being different. So I went to our community committee and I said, what about we do a not-for-profit funeral service? Like straight away everybody went, oh, we want to do that. Let's do that.
She knew instantly and very clearly that it needed to be a not-for-profit, but she also understood that being professionalised away from touching your dad's hair or putting on your mum's dress for the last time didn't help the grieving process. That what helps the grieving process is that ability to stay present with it.
Okay, so tell me what your understanding of that money is. If it's a pilot program...
I think everybody was pretty determined and I don't think everyone thought it wasn't going to happen. What we needed was money, what we needed was a building. But I could not find the money. I could not find the money. And I was just writing grant application after grant application.
This grant's due on the 15th, that gives us 10 days.
That was 7 years of applying for grants and getting knockbacks.
Yeah, I know, but
You've got to convince people that this thing that no one's done before, a community-run funeral service, is possible, is doable, makes sense.
And so then Lynette, of course, said, I think we have to make a film. This film has travelled around Australia and it has inspired and ignited communities around the country.
I'm a great believer in the power of showing. Sometimes you've got to show people something. And that became Tender the film.
When someone dies, the thing that comes forward is love. It's just something about doing all you can for the people that you love.
The first day I filmed, I met Nigel. So Nigel was the caretaker of the community centre. And he spent a lot of time there. He knew everyone knew him.
And Nigel doesn't want to, his sister said that he doesn't want to know his prognosis.
And Nigel dies in that film.
So I went to the doctors and they took a scan and they said, yeah, lung cancer. Then I told my sister. Then the tears came.
Yeah.
Like now.
Yeah. So. Nigel, it's the biggest thing we all face.
Yeah. I'm not ready for it yet.
The most profound gift of that film is Nigel's gift to it. that maybe the last thing he could do to help this incredible community was to let them show his death and let them do this first funeral, which was Nigel's funeral.
I'm Steve. I'm the brother that looks a little like him but doesn't dress like him. Last evening, I had the profound pleasure of helping some of Nigel's friends prepare him for today's journey, and we dressed him. And for me, that was mind-boggling because I had never imagined that I would get involved in that. But turned out to be a wonderful thing.
So then, with the film came the money. We did a crowdfunding campaign and people sent money from all around Australia. We got $5 bills rolled up in handwritten letters. We got a one-off $30,000 donation from somebody.
It's awesome. So good. So what we need.
Then Social Enterprise Finance Australia came on board to give us a loan.
Now I've got to work out how this goes.
And Vincent Fairfax Foundation came on board. It probably took about between 7 and 8 years between when first thinking about our tender to opening tender. But we didn't know, we didn't have a clue how you'd start a community funeral service.
Is there a back entrance that you'd like?
Someone sent me an email to say, have you ever heard of Zenith Virago?
First of all, does anybody have any questions?
I've spent 25 years living in the Northern Rivers, working with people who are dying, with their bodies when they are dead, and with their families,
to really reclaim those death processes.
Zenith was one of the first people to look at doing death differently in Australia. Yeah. She came to the community, she trained the community.
Before there was a funeral industry, there were always families taking care of their own, washing, cleaning them, dressing them.
Most people don't know that they can do it themselves. You can go from the bed to the cremator, the bed to the grave, without a professional person being involved. You need a medical person, but that's it.
None of it's rocket science. It's just not what the funeral industry is doing. Their first one is probably, how to make a profit.
The funeral industry is a corporate business and they are owning links in the chain which people don't understand, like the coffin manufacturer, the funeral director, the cemetery, the crematorium. That's a monopoly. And it's a huge industry. It's $1.6 billion.
As a natural and sacred part of our lives.
What was so exciting about it, I think, was that people would think that could only happen in Byron Bay. But I think the thing is that if it could happen in Port Kembla, then it can happen anywhere in Australia. We were all on this path to make it happen, and when people would join, they would join at the right time. Amy was one of those people. She came in at just the right time to help.
When I first started considering this sort of career, I was in Year 11. And we were watching a documentary of an autopsy. I was so intrigued watching these mortuary technicians because they were so blasé about it. I was like, I bet I could do that. And then that really became, oh, no, I really want to do that. The next year, I was really fortunate to be employed full-time at 17 in a funeral home. But I was very much feeling like I was stunted in my position, not able to offer the things that I felt like families should be offered. And then I saw this documentary called Tender. And it was so exciting seeing it because at stage, I really wanted to see a difference in the industry, and seeing this community that wanted to make that change, I just wanted to see them succeed. The next day, I called Jenny.
Here we go. You got it, but I don't think it's got the wording in it.
She had been in the funeral industry for 8 years, and I immediately thought, she's the one. I want her to run tender. So she was about 24 when she came to us. You don't want people to be thinking they're just going to view, that they can't interact with the body.
I just had great conviction that actually this was the best opportunity ever and I was the right person for the job. When I picked up the cool plate, the handle keeps sliding.
We're like a team, you know, and for the first 12 months it was really her and me, you know, and I didn't know what I was doing and she knew absolutely what she was doing.
Ready? Cushion would be good for him. Or try the green one.
I know about the
I know, but he's very yellow.
Funerals can cost between $6,000 and $40,000 actually. At tender, our funerals cost between $2,500 and $4,500. I think our most expensive funeral we've ever done has been $8,000. And that family said to us, oh, we usually pay that for the coffin.
Is there a back entrance that you'd like us to come by?
The model is we charge what it costs us. Then there's a $250 charge on top of that for people who can afford it.
Not be able to get there for another few hours.
And for people who can't afford it, there's that $250 goes into a benevolent fund, and so we can pay for some aspects of their funeral.
The value of a funeral shouldn't be judged on its cost. You know, the value of a funeral should be about what that experience was. And so we really just are shifting it away from the cost being the main thing about the funeral and actually, what service do you want? Do you know what service is possible? Most people don't know that they could have a funeral in their backyard or in their living room if they wanted to. They could choose no mortuary care at all. The funeral might look like a beer with friends or a dinner around a table. That could be a funeral.
If the farewell matches the person that we know, then we feel happy about the fact that we've been able to honour the person and have meaning in that. Now we're in Tender's 6th year, and in that time we've done over 1,000 funerals.
Hello, Tender Funerals. This is Amy speaking. You know, it's really helpful to just slow the process down. I wish more people did.
Drahomir was 64 years old before he died. He had prostate cancer that metastasised to his bones. He was definitely afraid, yeah. And that's why we spent 4 days and 3 nights holding him and holding his hand and talking to him. Then he just turned his head and he opened his eyes and he looked straight at me. And I said, it's okay, you can go. And then he just turned his head and then I just saw the light leave his eyes. It was really amazing to experience that, and I feel very grateful to him that he shared that with me as his friend, you know.
The last one's amazing. You'd remember this one, Marissa.
Drahosh is someone who is quite well known in our community as an artist.
Isn't it amazing?
At present, we're restricted to only 10 people attending a funeral. And so what we decided to do was for his community to decorate his coffin and for the act of decorating his coffin to be his funeral.
We have Minna's original characters from her own original book.
When I put the message out to our friends and our community, it was like, this is our ceremony, and as the family, we'd like to invite you to participate.
Oh, this was gorgeous.
Yeah. It's just actually been such a beautiful experience, sort of setting up this space, and all the community sending all their artworks and stuff.
The wonder, the brilliance, the darkness, the humour. It's very beautiful.
We always would say to people, would you like to come into the mortuary and wash and dress your person? And sometimes people say, no, we don't want to do that. And then they might ring back and say, actually, we've thought about that and we would really love to do that. Marissa had spent a long time caring for him as he was dying. People get tired, and she felt like she'd done what she needed to do in that process. So we did the next part of the process on her behalf.
He felt he had to direct you.
Honestly, it's a great honour to be asked to do that.
Into my arms. into my arms.
One of the things that we were really wanting to do was to make what was invisible visible. People can participate. I think 59% of people who come through tend to do participate in the care of their person. And in a traditional funeral service, I think in the past it's been like 1 or 2%.
Tip it, I'll lift it, and then we can place it on the trolley.
A few years ago, my grandmother passed away. She was always involved with the Scouts through her entire life, and she was adamant that she wanted a funeral service in a Scout hall. We contacted a few places, and Tender was the one that was able to enable a completely different funeral service. And then I found out that Tender actually did volunteer work and allowed volunteers to come in, so I signed straight up.
I just remember walking into the arrangement room and Sam said, "I love administration." I was like, oh my God, he's so unusual. I was like, "Do you?" He said, "I hear you're looking for an administrator." And I said, "We are." And then he told me that he'd rewritten the Excel training course for TAFE. I mean, how he's just turned 21, Sam.
Sam, here's your present. You have to open it in front of me.
Oh, that's your 20. Happy 21st from us. It's where's Rivka?
Oh, how cool! Coffin cufflinks.
And then I decided, I'll go into the mortuary, and found a passion for it.
Happy birthday. Thank you.
And then I got interested in mortuary studies that led me towards studying forensic medicine at the moment.
Our volunteers are incredible.
Do we know where all the cool plate stuff is?
I can't imagine Tender without volunteers. They help keep the price down. They're at the heart of what we do.
If you've been caring for someone that you love for a long time as they die, and then for them to just be removed and gone after they've died, that's such a stark end to that process. But what I would love is for people to know that actually they can continue that care if they'd like to. And they could do that using a cool plate, which is a refrigerated tray. It sits at about -15 degrees Celsius, and it just sits under the torso of the deceased to keep them cool.
This is the first time that I've taken a cool plate out to a family. The funeral homes I worked at didn't have any available for families to use.
Kevin didn't quite make 60. We'd been together for 32 years. He just had an aggressive form of cancer, and it just took everyone by surprise. He had 3 months.
Hello, is it Nikki? My name's Wes. I'm one of the funeral directors with Tender Funerals, and this is Sam. He's one of our volunteers. So we're just here to deliver the cool plate for you.
I broached the subject of the cold plate with Kevin when we were talking about the funeral, and I asked him would he mind, just to help us process and to be able to say goodbye to you our way. The option was there to have your private time with him and just to have those moments where you're in a relaxed, familiar environment. My kids could go in, the neighbours and some friends came in. It was our family under the one roof for one last time.
There is something that happens when you put your hands on the body of a person who you love that's died. You can really understand that person's gone. That body is gone. It doesn't mean you're not going to miss the person, but I think it's helpful. And I think it's helpful for the next stage, because the next stage is letting that body go.
Kevin goes by the name Teabags. His surname's Bushell, so it was a name he picked up when he was in the Navy.
And just rest the front down on there. Now come to the back.
He's worked at Bunnings, real big member of the community, guy that would do anything for anyone if you asked him to help out. Loved his motorbikes, and that will form a big part of his funeral today.
There was no way my husband was getting in the back of her hearse. No way was I going to do that. That's not who Kevin was. And by hook or by crook, we were going to get him there in his ute. He wanted people to be casually dressed. He wanted people just to be able to relax. And he also wanted to be at the wake. We ended up at the local surf club where Kevin had grown up, and it just felt so right that we do that.
This idea that could only really have emerged in this very particular, beautiful little community is now spreading across Australia.
After we got tender in Port Kembla, people almost really immediately started to ring and say they wanted to have their own tender.
Jane from Tender Funerals in Perth. We had 2 fantastic things happen this month.
There's now 6 tenders in different stages of development around Australia. They're in Far North Queensland, the ACT, Tasmania, Perth, and 2 in New South Wales.
At this point, everyone has to cross everything and we hope for the best.
The idea of it was that each community would own and operate their own tender, and what we needed to do was support them to do that.
So I'm Denise. I'm from the New South Wales Mid-North Coast.
And they do it. They do it. They're doing it. Like, Mid-North Coast is about to open.
It's nearly finished. In 2019, the Dying for Dignity group invited Jenny to come up and do a presentation on tender funerals. It was incredibly well received. The people there basically said, we want this in our community. Oh, yes. A core group of 4 to 5 volunteers have spent quite a lot of their time. Tender has that way of just sort of taking over your life, really.
Our cool plate is this lovely blue. Oh, no, it just did.
Is that new?
Yeah.
Oh, I like the blue.
Yeah, it looks good, doesn't it?
What I see happening is people doing amazing things when they work together. There's so many skilled people in our communities, and it's very inspiring.
Hey, that's beautiful. How much were they?
They're giving the community the gift that they don't even know they need until the minute they need it. And the minute they need it, they absolutely know they need it, and it's there. I find it very moving, actually, because it's really hard. Like, it's a really hard thing to do.
Underneath each one of these, we've got a little simulated pacemaker.
Like, if someone would give us $6 million, we could change the culture of funerals across the country. Like, it's not much money, right? It's hardly any money. But it's hard to get the money.
You're not allowed to cremate with any form of battery-powered device, so the pacemaker has to be removed before a cremation.
Sam's come up to do mortuary training.
I'm dragging it along the middle of the pacemaker.
Whilst staff have very different roles in the organisation, in the end, where need be, everyone does everything.
And you'll see the pacemaker.
So I might be the general manager, but if there's a hand needed in the mortuary, then I will do that.
You get the gist if you guys want to try it out.
Not really.
No?
Jenny with creating tender, and then the other tenders that are coming around the country, that's a revolution. And that is unstoppable. The profit-driven corporate funeral industry is worried, because once people know what's possible, they're not going to be satisfied with that.
The thing about being around death is that it does catapult you to the centre of life. It does wake up something in you, and the thing that it wakes up in you is this understanding that all life is limited. And it does make you sort of go, oh, you know, what am I going to do with my life? How am I going to live my life? And really, it would be a terrible shame to miss that opportunity. We don't want to realise that when we're on the brink of death.